She used her last coins, 3 dull, nearly forgotten quarters, to pay for a stranger's bus fare. A man in a torn suit, with dirt on his hands and a haunted look in his eyes. The driver had scoffed, refusing to believe his story. But she stood up anyway, dropped the coins in without a word, and returned to her seat without looking back. What she didn't know was that the man she helped wasn't homeless. He wasn't desperate. He was one of the richest men in the city. And what he did next, no one saw coming. Why would a millionaire need a stranger's help? Why didn't he say who he was? And why, of all people, her? Stay close. You're about to find out. Knox Wilder's fingers drummed against the leather steering wheel, the city's golden skyline shrinking behind him in the rearview mirror. The sun had long since dipped below the horizon, and Los Angeles now pulsed in shadows and neon. He loosened the top button of his shirt, exhaling as the glow of the day's chaos still buzzed in his veins. It had been another brutal day, shareholder calls, media appearances, and a heated negotiation with investors threatening to pull out of a Dubai expansion. But that didn't bother him. He was used to the noise. What wore him down was the emptiness that trailed after it. The soft hum of the Bentley's engine and the quiet of the night should have been comforting. Instead, he felt disconnected. Somewhere between tired and numb. His thoughts spiraled inward, about his late father's legacy, about the pressure of being the heir, about how no one really saw him anymore. Distracted, he missed the turn for the Pacific Highway, and instinctively swerved down a side street, the GPS recalculating with a soft ding. He barely noticed the shift, until it was too late. The road narrowed, the pavement cracked and forgotten. The streetlights here didn't glow, they buzzed, flickering like they were warning him to turn back. He eased off the gas. Something felt off. Then, out of nowhere, slam. A loud thud struck the rear of his car. Knox's heart jumped. He hit the brakes. "What the hell?" he whispered, glancing into the mirror. 3 figures had appeared behind him. Hoods up. One of them holding a metal pipe, the other circling to the side like a hyena closing in on prey. No. He threw the car into reverse, but before the wheels could spin, the front passenger door yanked open. A hand reached in, grabbing his collar. "Out of the car, pretty boy. Take it. Take everything." Knox's voice cracked. The next 60 seconds were a blur. One of them smashed the phone he tried to grab from the console. Another wrenched his Rolex from his wrist. The third climbed in and revved the engine. "Wait. That car's got a... Shut it." And just like that, they were gone. The taillights of his Bentley vanished into the night, swallowed by the dark like it never existed. Knox stood there in the middle of the street. The silence that followed was deafening. His breathing came in short, shocked bursts. His wallet, gone. Phone, gone. Knox it, ripped at the shoulder. He reached into his pants pocket out of instinct. Nothing. He looked down the street. Nothing but broken fences and boarded windows. No pedestrians. No corner stores. Just the eerie buzz of a street lamp and the echo of his own heartbeat. He tried flagging a car. None came. He muttered a string of curses, hands on his hips. Unbelievable. This can't be happening. For the first time in years, Knox Wilder wasn't the man in control. He wasn't the boss in the room. He wasn't anyone. He was just stranded. He walked. Not because he wanted to, but because there was no other choice. Each step felt heavier. His expensive loafers weren't made for concrete or distance, they pinched and rubbed his feet raw. The cold crept into his bones, and the adrenaline that had kept him standing started to burn out. Eventually, in the distance, he saw it. A dim glow. A rusted-out sign, Metro bus stop westbound. He nearly laughed. A bus. He hadn't taken one since college. But that didn't matter now. All that mattered was surviving the night. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that fate was waiting for him at that bus stop. And she had a name. The fluorescent lights inside the Sunset Diner buzzed with fatigue, like the people beneath them. It was nearly midnight, and Ivy Quinn's sneakers squeaked softly across the black and white tile floor as she wiped down the last counter. Her apron was stained with syrup and coffee. Her ponytail hung loose, a few strands stuck to her damp forehead. "Thanks again, hun," said a regular, tipping his paper cup toward her as he left. Ivy smiled faintly, but her eyes were glassy with exhaustion. "Good night, Mr. Lorne. Get home safe." She clocked out with a weary sigh, grabbing her threadbare denim knocksit from the hook behind the counter. The night air hit her cheeks as she stepped outside, cool and sharp, tinged with city grime. She walked a few blocks until she reached the westbound bus stop, dropping onto the bench with a thud. Digging into her canvas tote, she pulled out a small coin purse. She opened it slowly. 1, 2, 275. She counted again, as if the numbers might change. They didn't. These were her last coins until Friday. But tonight, she had no choice. Rent was late. Her roommate had bailed last week. And she still had to cover groceries for her younger sister, who was coming to stay over the weekend. Ivy stared at the coins in her palm, dull, scratched, almost weightless. "It's just a bus ride," she whispered. "One more day, Ellie. Just get through one more day." When the bus pulled up, she dropped the coins into the fare box with a metallic clink and offered the driver a small nod. Rick Coleman, a grizzled man with thick glasses and a wrinkled uniform, barely looked at her. "Evening." She walked halfway down the aisle and chose the window seat, resting her head against the cold glass. The bus jolted forward, the neon lights outside smearing like paint strokes across the darkness. She closed her eyes. Just 5 minutes. That's all she needed. Then, the bus hissed to a stop. Ivy didn't open her eyes at first, but she heard a voice. A man's. Urgent. Slightly out of breath. "Look, I'm not trying to scam anyone. I just got robbed. I have nothing on me. Please, I just need to get home." The voice cracked at the end. A beat of silence followed. Then came Rick's reply, flat, unimpressed. "Yeah. And I just saw Elvis at the corner store. No fare, no ride. Step aside." Ivy's eyes fluttered open. She turned her head slightly and saw him, a tall man, probably mid-30s, disheveled in a way that didn't quite match the rest of him. His shirt was wrinkled, one sleeve torn. There was dried blood on his knuckles. His shoes looked expensive, but were clearly not made for walking. He looked out of place. Too clean-cut for this part of town. Too polished to be standing there empty-handed. And yet, something in his eyes wasn't fake. There was panic there. And shame. Without a word, Ivy stood. She walked to the front of the bus, pulled out her coin purse again, and emptied the rest of it, 3/4, into the fare box. "There," she said quietly. "He's covered." Rick gave her a look. "You sure? He doesn't look like the charity type." "I'm sure." The man, Knox, stared at her, stunned. "You didn't have to do that," he said. Ivy shrugged. "Didn't look like you had a lot of options." He hesitated, then climbed aboard. "Thank you." "Really? Don't mention it." She turned and walked back to her seat, this time choosing the aisle. Knox found a spot 2 rows behind her and sat down, his thoughts spinning. Who was this woman? He kept glancing at her, trying not to be obvious. She leaned against the window again, eyes closed like none of this mattered. Like helping a stranger was just something you did when you could. Knox sat there in silence, watching the city slide by through the scratched window. But it wasn't the robbery that stuck in his mind. It was her. The silence in Knox's penthouse was louder than the chaos on the street hours earlier. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of downtown LA, glittering under the midnight sky. His Knoxit was draped carelessly over the back of a $5,000 leather armchair, his shoes abandoned by the door. He moved like a ghost through the marble floors, shirt untucked, face still smudged with the day's dirt and dried blood. He hadn't said a word to his driver when he finally borrowed a phone to call for a pickup. He didn't check his emails, didn't call security, didn't even pour himself a drink, something he always did after a stressful day. Instead, he just stood in the middle of the living room, staring out at the city. Thinking about her. He didn't even know her name. But he remembered her eyes, steady, calm. And the way she helped him without asking for anything in return. The way she just stood up, dropped her last coins into the fare box, and sat back down like it was nothing. Who does that anymore? He replayed the scene in his head over and over, trying to understand why it haunted him. He'd met hundreds of women, on red carpets, in boardrooms, at fundraisers. Most of them smiled too wide, or asked too many questions. But her? She didn't ask him anything. That kind of kindness, it unsettled him. Because it felt real. He sat on the edge of his bed, rubbed his temples, then grabbed his phone from the nightstand and hit a familiar number. Ring? Ring? A sleepy voice picked up on the third ring. Knox? It's 2 in the morning. Are you okay? Melissa, he said. I need a favor. There was a pause. Then, that's never a good way to start a call. I'm serious. I need you to find someone for me. A woman I met tonight. I don't know her name, but I think she works at a diner somewhere downtown. Late shift. Okay. This is cryptic even for you. What's going on? Knox stood, pacing now. I got mugged. Lost everything, car, phone, wallet. I ended up on a bus, of all places. And she paid my fare. Didn't know me. Didn't ask who I was. Just helped. Wait, back up, you got mugged. I'm fine, he said quickly. But I need to find her. I need to see her again. Melissa sighed. Do you at least remember what the diner looked like? A name? A street? No. But the bus was westbound. Late night. Somewhere around the warehouse district. I'll check with Metro in the morning. See if I can find the route, maybe check surveillance. Knox? Are you sure this isn't just adrenaline talking? I don't know what this is, he admitted. But I haven't stopped thinking about her since I got home. That has to mean something, right? There was a pause on the line. Then Melissa said softly, okay. I'll look into it first thing. Thanks. He hung up and sank back into the leather couch, staring at the ceiling. He'd spent his whole life surrounded by people who wanted something from him, money, influence, a name drop. But tonight, in the quiet hum of a half-empty bus, someone had seen him not as Knox Wilder the millionaire, but just a man who needed help. And for the first time in a long while, he didn't feel alone. The chime above the door gave a soft ring as Knox stepped inside the Sunset Diner. It was a small place, the kind that time forgot, checkered floors, cracked leather stools, a jukebox in the corner playing faint doo-wop. The smell of fresh coffee and fried onions filled the air, grounding him in something real. Something comforting. Knox looked out of place in his tailored coat and clean-cut appearance, but he didn't care. His eyes scanned the diner until they found her. Ivy. She moved between tables with practiced ease, balancing 2 plates in one hand, refilling coffee with the other. Her ponytail bounced with every step, and though her face showed signs of fatigue, there was something resilient about her presence. Strong. Unshaken. He took a seat at the counter. Quietly. He didn't want to disrupt her rhythm, he just wanted to see her again. Minutes passed. She didn't notice him at first. The late lunch crowd was thick. But eventually, she circled back to the counter to drop off a check. Her eyes flicked up, just a glance. Then they widened. You? She blinked, stunned. A slow, skeptical smile crept across her lips. What are you doing here? Knox smiled softly. I came to return a favor, he said, his tone warm but careful. Ivy raised an eyebrow, folding her arms. For what? A bus fare. It wasn't just a fare. It was timing. It was kindness. It was the first good thing that happened to me that night. She stared at him for a moment, then let out a soft laugh, half amused, half disbelieving. Okay, city boy, she said, sliding a rag across the counter. You tracked me down, just to say thank you. And to buy you a cup of coffee. She tilted her head. You think that evens the score? No, he admitted. But it's a start. Ivy studied him, as if trying to figure out what game he was playing. But she didn't sense arrogance. Just sincerity. And maybe a bit of confusion, like he didn't quite understand why he was here, only that he had to be. Fine, she said at last, grabbing a fresh mug. She poured coffee from the pot and set it down in front of him. But it's on the house, she added. I don't charge for basic human decency. Knox smiled again, this time more fully. Then let me pay you back some other way. Ivy shook her head, grinning. You're persistent, huh? Only when something matters. For the next few minutes, they didn't speak. She returned to her tables, and he sipped the coffee, watching her in quiet admiration. He didn't know it yet, but something had already shifted. The bus ride was just the beginning. It started with a coffee. Then another. By the end of the week, Knox Wilder was at Sunset Diner every morning by 7:15, always sitting in the same stool, third from the left at the counter. No bodyguards. No flashy car. Just a dark wool coat, clean shirt, and a look in his eyes like he was exactly where he wanted to be. Ivy noticed it on the third day. You following me or something? She teased as she refilled his mug. Maybe I just like the coffee, Knox replied with a smirk. Liar, she shot back, but she smiled as she said it. Their conversations started small, weather, city traffic, the diner's oddball regulars. But soon, Knox began to ask questions that no one else bothered to ask. So what do you do when you're not slinging pancakes and refilling coffee? Ivy leaned against the counter, wiping her hands with a towel. Mostly survive. But someday. She paused, eyes lighting up with something rare, hope. Someday, I'm going to open my own bakery. Sweet Shore Bakery. By the beach. Big windows. White brick. The kind of place where you walk in and just breathe easier. Knox blinked. You've really thought about this? Every day, she said. When I'm stuck on the night shift, when my feet hurt, when the rent's late. That dream. That's what keeps me going. He didn't respond right away. He just looked at her, really looked. It was the first time someone had said something purely for themselves, without any expectation. And he realized something. This woman had more fire in her than most CEOs he knew. Ivy, meanwhile, was beginning to notice the way Knox carried himself. His words were careful, deliberate. He had an eye for detail, always noticing when the napkin dispenser was out, or when the jukebox played the same track twice in a row. He was kind, but always just a little distant. Like someone trained to keep secrets. His clothes were expensive, too expensive for a man who claimed to just be between jobs. His watch when he finally replaced the stolen one wasn't flashy, but she knew quality when she saw it. His shoes never had the same wear most of her customers carried. And there was the way he listened. Not like someone passing time, but like someone trying to understand her. Still, she never pushed. Maybe he was rich. Maybe he was just well-groomed. Either way, he showed up, he drank his coffee, and he made her mornings less heavy. That was enough. But one morning, as the sun filtered through the blinds and cast soft shadows across the counter, she looked at him longer than usual. "You know," she said thoughtfully, "you don't talk much about yourself." Knox looked down at his mug, swirling the last sip of coffee. "Not much to say." "I don't believe that." He glanced at her, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Maybe someday, I'll tell you everything." Ivy raised a brow. "That's supposed to be a promise." "It's a maybe." And for now, that was enough for her. They were two people from different worlds. But in the quiet hours between sunrise and the city waking up, they were just Knox and Ivy, sharing warmth, coffee, and something unspoken between them. The night air in Willow Bay was laced with sea breeze and distant laughter from beachside bars. Ivy tugged her hoodie tighter around herself as she walked past the luxury stretch of Oceanfront Drive. She wasn't supposed to be here. Normally, she'd take the bus straight home after her shift. But her friend Sarah had left her Knoxit at work, and Ivy, always the helpful one, offered to drop it off at the resort where Sarah waitressed part-time. She crossed the valet entrance of the Whitmore Grand, the most exclusive hotel in the Bay, all marble pillars and glimmering chandeliers. She almost didn't look up. Almost. But then she heard a voice. His voice. She froze. Turned. And saw him. Knox. He wasn't in his usual coat, or worn-in button-downs. He stood in a navy suit, crisp and tailored, the kind that didn't just say money, it commanded it. The streetlight caught the edge of a watch on his wrist, sleek, subtle, unmistakably expensive. But what made her stomach drop wasn't the suit. It was the man he was speaking to. Charles Whitmore. A name she recognized from headlines and business shows playing on the diner's mounted TV. The real estate tycoon. Billionaire. A man who didn't talk to nobodies. "We'll finalize the transition next quarter," Knox was saying. "The board just needs the reassurance." "They'll get it," Whitmore interrupted. "The Wilder legacy is in good hands." Wilder. Her blood turned cold. She stood across the street, hidden in the shadow of a palm tree, pulse pounding. Knox laughed politely, shook Whitmore's hand, then turned toward the entrance of the hotel, chatting with the concierge like he belonged there. Because he did. Ivy backed away slowly, heart thudding like a drum inside her chest. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she sat on her small couch, legs curled under her, eyes locked on her cracked phone screen. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed. Knox Wilder, Hotel. Dozens of results flooded in. Knox Wilder named incoming CEO of Wilder International. Luxury hotel empire to be passed down to billionaire heir. Meet the man behind the legacy. Knox Wilder steps into the spotlight. Photos. Gala appearances. interviews. It was all there. He lied. He sat in front of her, day after day, in that damn diner, sipping coffee and smiling like he was just another guy trying to make it through life. He listened to her talk about her dreams. He asked questions about her family, her struggles. And the whole time, he was playing a role. She dropped the phone onto the coffee table with a soft thud, her chest tight. Was it just a game to him? Was she just another experience for a bored billionaire slumming it among the working class? Her throat burned. She felt stupid. And worse, betrayed. The next morning, she didn't go to work. She needed time. Space. And when she finally picked up her phone again, it wasn't to text him. It was to delete his number. The door to Sunset Diner swung open with a soft creak, letting in the smell of sea air and the sharp tension of something about to shatter. Knox stepped in slowly, not like the man who used to stride in every morning with a quiet smile and steady rhythm, but like someone walking into a battlefield. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the black and white tiles. The usual murmur of regulars felt distant, muffled under the weight in his chest. And there she was. Ivy. Wiping down the counter, jaw set tight, her movements a little too precise. Her eyes flicked up the moment she sensed him near. And when their eyes met, the warmth she used to greet him with was gone. It was cold. Controlled. Knox tried to smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Hey. Ivy didn't smile back. Didn't even answer. Instead, she grabbed the coffee pot with robotic calm and walked to the far end of the counter, refilling an old man's mug. Knox stepped closer, his voice lower now. Can we talk? She turned slowly. The look on her face was no longer icy, it was fire contained behind glass. You want to talk? She said, quietly at first. Now you want to talk? Knox nodded, voice cracking. I know I should have told you. I should have said something. Ivy set the pot down with a soft thud. Then walked toward him, not caring that half the diner was now subtly watching. You think this is about your money? Her voice rose, barely held back. This isn't about you being rich, Knox. This is about you lying to me. Over and over. Every single day you sat there, pretending to be someone you're not. Knox's hands clenched by his sides. I wasn't pretending. I didn't want that part of my life to get in the way. Ivy stepped closer, pain flashing in her eyes. The part of your life that defines everything about you. The part that explains the shoes, the watch, the way you speak, the way you disappear without ever really answering anything. She shook her head. Her voice trembled now. You looked me in the eye and let me believe you were struggling. That we were the same. Knox's voice dropped, almost pleading. I never wanted to deceive you. I wanted to know what it felt like to be treated like a normal person. No assumptions. No walls. You think I made assumptions? She snapped. You think I would have judged you, looked at you differently, if you'd just told me the truth? Knox opened his mouth, but no words came out. Because deep down, yes, he had feared exactly that. Ivy's voice cracked now, softer, but more painful than any shout. I shared everything with you, Knox. My dreams. My worst days. I let you into my world, and you never once let me into yours. The diner had gone completely silent. A spoon clinked in the background. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. Knox stepped forward, desperation growing. Let me explain. Just, give me a chance to fix this. But Ivy was already shaking her head. You can't fix trust, Knox. Not like this. Her fingers trembled as she reached behind her neck and untied her apron. She folded it carefully. Too carefully. Then placed it on the counter. She didn't look at him again. She just whispered, "I need space. Please don't come back." And then she walked away, past the coffee machines, past the kitchen doors, until the only thing left of her was the scent of vanilla and soap and heartbreak. Knox stood there, hollow. Not just rejected. Not just ashamed. He was undone. He had walked into that diner to come clean. But he'd walked out of it with something missing, something he wasn't sure he'd ever get back. The Wilder Legacy boardroom always smelled like power, leather chairs, cold metal, polished wood, and the tension of men who'd never heard no in their lives. But Knox sat at the head of the long table, still and unreadable. Charles Whitmore's voice filled the silence. "With your father's passing, the transition must happen fast. We can't afford sentimentality, Knox." Melissa, seated to Knox's right, glanced at him. Her fingers hovered above her tablet, ready to take notes. Knox didn't speak. He just looked out the window, at the city skyline he once wanted to conquer. Now it looked distant, mechanical, soulless. He pictured Ivy's hands dusted with flour. The way her eyes sparkled when she talked about her dream. The laugh she tried to hide when she thought he wasn't listening. And he saw himself, sitting across from her at that diner counter, more alive than he'd ever felt in these suits, these meetings, these boardrooms. He stood up, slowly. Cleared his throat. "I'm not taking the CEO position." Melissa dropped her pen. Whitmore's jaw clenched. A few others straightened in their seats like they hadn't heard right. "Excuse me," Whitmore said, voice low and dangerous. Knox's tone didn't waver. "I appreciate everything this company has given me. But I can't lead it when I don't believe in what it's become." He turned to Melissa. "Thank you for everything. I'll call you when I need you, but it won't be from this tower." And then, without a glance back, he walked out. 3 weeks later, Willow Bay. There was no boardroom now. Just wind and salt and the hum of construction tools. Knox stood in boots, jeans, and a t-shirt stained with sweat and sawdust. He was holding a level, squinting at a beam with the architect beside him. The sound of gulls circled above as the framework of Seabreeze Haven began to take form, wooden ribs of a hotel that would hold fewer than 20 rooms, but hold far more meaning than the entire Wilder empire. Knox wiped sweat from his brow, smiling faintly as he looked out toward the shoreline. This was the first thing he'd ever built that wasn't about legacy. Wasn't about headlines. Wasn't about his name. This was about her. He hesitated in front of Ivy's apartment building longer than he should have. Every instinct told him to turn around. But this time, he wouldn't run. He rang the bell. The door opened halfway. Ivy. Hair tied up in a messy bun. Eyes tired. Walls high. She didn't invite him in. Knox. He nodded once. "Hey." She crossed her arms. "What are you doing here?" He reached into his messenger bag and pulled out a folder, worn at the edges from being opened 100 times. "I came to ask you for something," he said. "No tricks. No secrets this time." Ivy narrowed her eyes. "I'm listening." He held the folder out. Inside were plans. Drawings. Color palettes. Photos of a coastal lot under construction. A large sketch with bold letters at the top. Seabreeze Haven ground floor. Sweet Shore Bakery proposed. She blinked. What is this?" Knox's voice was steady, but his heart pounded. "A real place. By the ocean. Small. Personal. I'm building it. No investors. No press. Just me. He took a breath. And there's a space inside it that I haven't filled yet. Because I was hoping it would be yours. Ivy's breath hitched. She opened the folder fully now, flipping through the mock-ups, bakery signage, soft blue and cream tiles, seating for 12, large windows that overlooked the sea. It was exactly what she'd once described. Down to the smallest detail. You remembered, she whispered. Every word, he said softly. I want to build it with you. Not for you. With you. Because you're the only person I've ever met who makes dreams feel possible. He hesitated. I know I hurt you. And I don't deserve a second chance. But I'm not asking for forgiveness, Ivy. I'm just asking. Can we start over? This time, with nothing hidden. For a long moment, she didn't say a word. Her fingers rested on the edge of the folder, gaze drifting out the window behind him. Then she spoke, quiet, but firm. You really quit Wilder? Yes. You gave up $1 billion legacy. For this. Knox met her eyes. I gave it up for something real. Ivy closed the folder. And for the first time since that night in the diner, she smiled. Okay, she said softly. Let's see if we can build something real. The folder lay open on Ivy's tiny kitchen table for 3 days. It sat beside an overdue electricity bill, her spiral-bound notebook of half-baked bakery ideas, and a mug that once read Dream Big, but the lettering had faded from too many washes. She'd read the proposal a dozen times. Every page bore her name. Her dream. Sweet Shore Bakery interior proposal, designed with Ivy Quinn. He'd remembered everything, from the seafoam green she once said reminded her of her mother's curtains, to the window seating for early morning coffee loners, like herself. But still, doubt lingered. What if this is just another illusion? Another beautifully wrapped, too good to be true gesture from a man born into safety nets and soft landings. Ivy stared at her reflection in the microwave door. No makeup. Shirt wrinkled. Exhausted from double shifts. Can someone like me really step into something like that? And not lose myself again? She didn't answer Knox's calls. Not right away. Instead, she walked the beach near the construction site, pacing through the fog of her own fear. It wasn't just about business. It was about trust. About betting on him, again. But more than that, betting on herself. 4 days later, construction site, Willow Bay. Knox was overseeing the delivery of recycled wood beams when he turned and saw her. Ivy. Standing at the edge of the gravel, hands in her pockets, wind tugging at her Knox-it. He froze. So did time. She walked toward him slowly, boots crunching on the unfinished path. Knox set down the beam and approached carefully, as if one wrong word might send her running again. You came. I had to see if it was real, she replied, eyes scanning the site. The bones of a future stood before her, scaffolding, sawdust, beginnings. She turned to him, eyes unreadable. I'm not saying yes because of you. Knox nodded. I wouldn't want you to. I'm saying yes. Because I've been playing small for too long. Because I've talked about Sweet Shore like it was some fairytale I'd never touch. And now, it's right here, waiting. Knox didn't speak. He didn't need to. His face said everything. Ivy took a deep breath. But this doesn't make us okay. We're building a bakery, not a love story. I'm here to work. If that's something you can handle. Knox offered a smile. It's all I've wanted since I left that boardroom. They shook hands, firm, equal. And that's how it began. The first few weeks were exhilarating and brutal. Ivy split her time between the construction site and a shared commercial kitchen 30 minutes away, where she tested recipes deep into the night. On days she didn't cry over burnt croissants, she argued with suppliers over late deliveries and spent hours tweaking her business plan with numbers that refused to add up. Knox, meanwhile, learned the hard way that small-town permitting was slower than any corporate deal he'd ever negotiated. A last-minute plumbing regulation added $20,000 to their budget. One of their lead builders quit midway due to a family emergency. Even the paint they picked peeled wrong under the coastal humidity. Tempers flared. Once, Ivy stormed out mid-argument when Knox suggested redoing the menu to appeal more to upscale weekenders. If you want a brand, Knox, build a brand. I'm building a bakery. There's a difference. He let her go. He didn't chase. But the next morning, he showed up with coffee and 2 bags of flour. Keep the menu. But the blueberry scones could use more lemon. She threw a rag at him. They both laughed. As the hotel rose from dust, so did something between them, slow, cautious, honest. They shared little victories. The first successful test batch of her cinnamon rolls, the moment the Sweet Shore sign went up on the glass storefront, the day their first espresso machine arrived and Knox nearly broke it within 5 minutes. They also shared defeats, the leaky freezer, the tax paperwork nightmare, the emotional weight of 2 people trying to build something new without letting old wounds rot beneath the surface. One night, after a 14-hour workday, they sat on the bakery floor, back to the oven, eating cold banana bread in silence. Ivy glanced at him. Do you ever regret walking away from it all? Knox didn't even think. Only on the days I forget why I left. But you remind me. She didn't say anything in return. But she leaned her head against his shoulder. And stayed there. Not in grand gestures. But in scraped knuckles. Burnt sugar. Shared burdens. Quiet faith. And the realization that the most meaningful things in life aren't built in boardrooms, but in the messy, uncertain places in between. The grand opening had come and gone. Seabreeze Haven glowed in the soft amber light of early evening, its white shutters catching the last warmth of the sun. The scent of cinnamon, salt, and fresh coffee drifted lazily down the beach from Sweet Shore Bakery, where the final batch of almond croissants was cooling on wire racks. The guests had checked in. The last receipt had been counted. The music had faded into silence. And for the first time in months, it was just quiet. Ivy sat barefoot on the sand, the edge of her linen dress dusted with grains of salt and flour. Knox was beside her, sleeves rolled up, his fingers entwined with hers as the sky melted from golden to blush, then soft violet. Neither of them said anything for a long time. They just watched the tide roll in and out, like breath. Like rhythm. Like peace finally earned. Ivy broke the silence first. I thought I'd feel more excited. Knox turned to her, smiling gently. You're not. No, I am, she said, laughing softly. It's just. It feels quiet. And full. Like nothing's missing anymore. Knox nodded. Exactly. He reached into the pocket of his jeans, fingers closing around a small velvet box. His pulse quickened. He hadn't planned this moment. There were no violinists hiding in the dunes. No Instagram perfect setup. Just sand, sea, and the woman who had changed everything. He stood up slowly, brushing the sand from his knees, then turned to face her. She looked up, confused. What are you doing? Knox didn't answer. He dropped to one knee. Ivy's hand flew to her mouth. Knox? His voice was quiet, but steady. I used to think I knew what purpose looked like. It was profit margins, leadership titles, winning. But that was noise. The real thing, what actually matters, showed up the night you spent your last few coins on a stranger who didn't even deserve your kindness. She blinked fast. Her eyes shimmered. Since that moment, he continued, I've been building something, not just a hotel, not just a bakery, but a life that means something. And I can't imagine living it with anyone but you. He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a small sapphire at the center. The same color as her eyes when she talked about her dreams. Ivy Quinn, he said softly, will you marry me? Tears spilled silently down her cheeks. She didn't hesitate. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, laughing through the tears, yes. Of course yes. Knox stood, and she launched into his arms, burying her face into his neck. The ocean roared behind them, the sun dipped below the horizon, and the lights from their hotel glowed in the distance like a beacon. They had built something real. Together. The beach was quiet that afternoon, save for the soft whisper of waves and the rustling of linen canopies swaying in the breeze. The sun was beginning to lower, casting warm honeyed light across the sand, turning everything gold. There were no grand arches. No marble aisle. Just a white path made of seashells and driftwood, leading down to a simple altar built by hand, by Knox himself. Friends and family filled the modest wooden benches, hotel staff, bakery regulars, Ivy's younger sister clutching a tissue in her lap, Melissa in a pale blue dress, smiling from the front row. Knox stood barefoot in the sand, wearing a cream shirt rolled at the sleeves and khaki trousers. His eyes were fixed on the path ahead. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't fidgeting. He just stood there like a man who knew, without a single doubt, that he was exactly where he was meant to be. And then she appeared. Ivy. Barefoot, glowing, her simple white dress trailing behind her like ocean foam. Her hair was down, gently tousled by the wind. No veil. No diamonds. Just wildflowers tucked behind one ear, and that look in her eyes, the one Knox had fallen in love with before he even knew her name. He exhaled softly, a smile breaking over his face like sunrise. She walked slowly, steadily, each step imprinting the sand. When she reached him, she didn't speak. Just took his hand. The officiant gave a brief introduction, but no one really heard the words. The beach, the light, the hush between two hearts, that was the ceremony. Then came the vows. Knox turned to her, his voice steady but thick with emotion. Ivy. You didn't just save me that night on the bus. You saved me every day after. From a life that looked perfect, but felt empty. From a future I didn't choose. From myself. He paused, eyes shining. From now on, I promise this, no more masks, no more walls. Just us, building a life that matters. Together. She smiled, tears in her eyes, and whispered. From now on VAM S kung nho tenen mt kuk SNG a with acute NG. A soft breeze passed over them, like the world itself was breathing with them. They slipped rings on each other's fingers, simple bands, handcrafted by a local artisan. No fanfare. Just meaning. When they kissed, it wasn't dramatic or perfect, it was real. The kind of kiss two people share after choosing each other again and again, through every fight, every fear, every quiet moment in between. The crowd stood and cheered. Someone popped champagne from the back. Ivy laughed, burying her face into Knox's chest. He held her tighter than ever before. And in that moment, they weren't just newlyweds. They were partners. Teammates. Survivors of their own stories. And the next chapter was waiting. Willow Bay had changed. Locals said it started with the smell, warm vanilla, and sea salt drifting down the boardwalk every morning. Tourists followed their noses to a small, seafoam-colored bakery tucked beneath a white shuttered inn. Sweet Shore Bakery. The line spilled out the door most days. Ivy, in her flour-dusted apron and radiant smile, served up pastries with a side of heart. Locals loved her cinnamon rolls. Visitors traveled hours for her lemon tarts. Above the bakery, tucked behind wide-open windows and ocean breezes, stood Seabreeze Haven, a quiet, intimate hotel that offered no luxury but peace, no extravagance but care. Knox personally greeted every guest who checked in. Sometimes barefoot. Always genuine. They ran it all side by side. Not always smoothly, but always together. When the espresso machine broke, Ivy fixed it with a wrench in one hand and her hair tied up in a pencil. When a guest left a bad review, Knox wrote them a handwritten apology and offered a free night's stay. And when one of them burned out, the other stepped in. They worked. They lived. They loved. Not in the kind of way you'd find in fairy tales, but in the kind of way you find in real life, through patience, through shared effort, through choosing each other day after day. And through it all, they never forgot what brought them here, a moment of kindness on a city bus. A handful of coins. A second chance. One evening, long after the last croissant had been sold and the final guest had turned in, Knox and Ivy sat on the sand behind their hotel. The ocean stretched before them, endless and calm. The sky was melting into gold, then rose, then deep purple. They didn't speak at first. They just sat, legs stretched out, backs against driftwood, her head resting on his shoulder. Then Knox spoke, almost a whisper. You know, I used to think life was about chasing things. Big things. Money. Power. Legacy. Ivy looked up at him, smiling softly. He turned to her, eyes warm. But now I know. Life isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in moments. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. The ones that mean something. She leaned into him. And together, they watched the sun disappear into the horizon, no rush, no fear, no need for more. Because they had everything. Not in their pockets. But in their hands. In their hearts. And in the life they'd built, quiet, resilient, and full of meaning. There are stories about riches. About fate. About dreams so grand they feel untouchable. But this wasn't one of them. This was a story about two people from different worlds, one born into everything, the other fighting for anything. A girl with a pocket full of coins, and a man who had everything but meaning. What brought them together wasn't perfection. It was kindness. Honesty. The courage to be seen without masks. Knox and Ivy didn't fall in love through wealth or legacy. They found each other in a moment of truth. And they built something not with money, but with trust, grit, and shared purpose. Because in the end, true love transcends status and material wealth. When we dare to live authentically, shedding the expectations others place upon us, happiness finds its way back, through the simplest, most sincere things. A cup of coffee. A quiet sunrise. A hand held, not for show, but for real.